The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in...
The message was not delivered through a speech, a legal declaration, or a dramatic palace announcement. It was communicated through a single chair. Before Meghan entered the room, a senior royal aide quietly removed her place card from the inner family table and carried it toward a distant seat. That small movement revealed a decision far larger than dinner protocol. She had been denied the sovereign's family seat at every official royal table. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan entered Windsor Castle expecting restraint, not rejection. Harry walked beside her, alert to every glance and controlled gesture. The sovereign's family seat, the protected inner position reserved for senior working royals and crown representatives, was not merely a chair near the monarch. It offered access to private conversation, official photographs, and a public signal that its occupant belonged inside the monarchy's trusted circle. Then the equerry moved. Meghan stopped as her place card was lifted from the principal table and carried several tables away. An equerry is a senior royal aide who manages ceremonial arrangements during official events. He offered no explanation. Harry gripped the abandoned chair and quietly asked who had ordered the change. The aide lowered his voice, but he did not answer. Silence made the insult heavier. Meghan controlled her expression, yet shock, embarrassment, and anger pressed beneath every breath. Harry watched her absorb what the room already understood. This was not a last-minute adjustment or temporary precaution. The place beside him had been removed before she arrived because the decision was final. A sealed protocol note confirmed the truth. The document, a formal household instruction governing ceremony and rank, declared that Meghan would be denied the exclusive seat at every future royal table. State dinners, family banquets, diplomatic receptions, and ceremonial luncheons were covered. Whether she entered beside Harry, arrived privately, or attended inside a royal residence, the boundary would remain. Charles had approved the directive, but the language carried another hand. Someone knew the oldest rules of precedence, the system deciding who sits where and why. Someone had shaped the order so carefully that reversing it would require more than sympathy. Across the room that very night, Harry watched William, Catherine, Camilla, and Anne take their places at the principal table. His anger was no longer focused on the chair. It was focused on the person who had decided Meghan would never occupy it again. But before Harry could confront the person behind the order, he had to face the far more painful truth that nearly everyone around the table understood exactly what the empty chair meant. To an outsider, the dispute could appear absurd. A family divided over where one woman was allowed to sit. Inside the monarchy, however, placement was never casual. Every chair represented rank, trust, proximity, and power. Meghan saw rejection. Harry saw an attack on his marriage. William saw protection of the institution. Charles saw a crisis he had delayed too long. And Camilla understood that one altered place card could reopen every wound in the family. Meghan carried the humiliation long after the banquet ended. The directive was more than a seating rule. It told her that marriage to Harry had not restored her standing, and that even a peaceful return would not bring her back into the trusted circle. Royal protocol, the system of rules controlling rank, access, and ceremonial order, had become something deeply personal. She had been welcomed into the room, but not into the family's center. Harry felt the same wound differently. He saw the exclusion as proof that palace forgiveness came with limits. The family expected him to attend, smile, and participate, while his wife remained visibly separated from him. To the prince, that was not compromise. It was a demand that he accept Meghan's humiliation in exchange for his own place at the table. Later, Meghan removed the untouched place card from her handbag and placed it between them. She asked whether he had known the decision was already final. Harry looked away before answering. That pause said enough. She did not raise her voice, but the hurt in her face deepened because he had suspected the truth and still allowed her to enter the room unprepared. William carried a different fear. Before entering a private council meeting, he told Catherine that restoring Meghan to the inner seating circle would look like returning authority without restoring responsibility. A council meeting is a closed royal discussion where senior family members consider decisions affecting the monarchy. Catherine listened carefully, knowing her own seat had now become part of the argument. She understood his concern, but she also saw how easily duty could become punishment. Camilla remained uneasy. She remembered what public exclusion had once done to her, and she knew ceremonial rank could wound more deeply than open criticism. Yet challenging Charles would expose a division at the heart of the crown. Anne offered no such hesitation. She believed the principal table could not become a bargaining tool whenever family pressure rose, and her support gave the order strength. Charles stood trapped between fatherhood and kingship. He had approved the exclusion only after receiving a private written warning about an earlier encounter involving Meghan. The account claimed that something said during one royal dinner had destroyed confidence in her access to private conversations. That warning did not begin with a newspaper interview or a public accusation. It began during one private royal dinner when a single conversation crossed a line the palace never forgot. Months before the place card was removed, Meghan had still been offered one final path back toward the royal center. It came during a private family supper at Sandringham, away from cameras and public ceremony. The evening was intended to lower tensions. Instead, one conversation changed everything. By the time the doors closed, Anne had left the table furious. William had warned Charles privately, and Meghan's future place within the family had already begun to disappear. Charles had arranged the supper as a quiet test of reconciliation. Sandringham is the monarch's private country estate, often used for family gatherings away from formal palace life. He invited Meghan and Harry to sit with William, Catherine, Camilla, and Anne, without press, courtiers, or speeches shaping every word. The king wanted proof that the family could still speak honestly, without turning each sentence into another public wound. Meghan understood what the invitation offered. She was seated beside Harry at the inner table, close enough to Charles to hear sensitive discussion and take part in it. The placement was meant as trust, not ceremony. If the evening succeeded, it could open the door to limited inclusion at future royal events. If it failed, the consequences would reach far beyond one meal. Then dessert changed everything. Meghan challenged Anne over a confidential discussion concerning future patronages. A patronage is a formal royal connection to a charity or public organization, often carrying prestige and influence. She repeated details from a private correspondence that the princess believed had never left a restricted family circle. Anne placed her spoon down slowly, turned toward Harry, and asked how Meghan had obtained the information. Harry looked stunned. Meghan answered that married couples did not keep secrets from one another. Her words were calm, but the room hardened around them. Anne heard a breach of trust. Meghan saw a marriage being judged for its honesty. Charles watched reconciliation collapse in real time, while Camilla remained silent, and Catherine tried to stop the conversation from becoming cruel. William acted after the meal. In a corridor with no aides present, he told Charles that privileged seating granted more than honor. It created access to conversations capable of shaping the crown. He warned that trust could not survive if every private exchange might later become leverage. The future king spoke with restraint, but his meaning was unmistakable. Charles resisted the harshest response. Alone with the unfinished seating chart, he circled Meghan's name, then set down his pen without signing. Guilt delayed him, but it did not erase the warning. Anne submitted a historical protocol memorandum the following morning. The document explained that the sovereign's family seat was discretionary, not automatic, giving the palace the exact mechanism it needed. The rule now had a justification. The palace had a mechanism, and Charles had run out of reasons to delay, but Harry was about to challenge the decision face to face. Harry did not request a formal review. He did not send another letter or ask an intermediary to soften the language. The morning after Meghan's exclusion became undeniable, he entered Charles's private sitting room with the discarded place card in his hand. William was already there. Anne stood near the fireplace. No cameras captured what followed, but the confrontation would determine whether the dispute remained a matter of protocol or became a permanent family rupture. Harry placed the card on his father's desk and asked him to look at it. The directive, a formal palace instruction carrying the monarch's authority, did not merely regulate seating. It declared that Meghan could attend royal events, stand in royal rooms, and enter royal residences, yet still remain outside the trusted center. To him, that was not caution. It was punishment made permanent. Charles stared at the card without touching it. The silence stretched until even William shifted in his chair. Harry asked why his wife had been moved, and whether anything she did in the future could ever change the decision. The king did not answer immediately, and that delay made the room feel colder than anger. William finally spoke. The sovereign's family seat was not a marital entitlement, he said, and Harry could not demand access simply because exclusion felt unfair. The prince argued that proximity to the monarch required confidence because private table conversations could involve charities, state visitors, family decisions, and future crown responsibilities. Anne supported him. She said trust could not be negotiated under emotional pressure. Harry turned on his brother. He accused William of protecting Catherine's position by ensuring Meghan remained permanently beneath her. The restraint disappeared from the future king's voice. Catherine's place, he replied, had been earned through years of service and discretion. It had not been preserved by pushing another woman away. Harry rejected the distinction, insisting that the results still looked exactly the same. Then Charles ended the uncertainty. The monarch admitted that he had personally approved the exclusion after reviewing the Sandringham incident and documented accounts of later breaches of confidence. Harry had hoped advisors, courtiers, or old palace officials were responsible. Hearing his father claim the decision destroyed that final defense. One condition remained hidden inside the protocol. Meghan's position could be reviewed after a sustained period of private reconciliation, but restoration required unanimous consent from the senior royals at the principal table. Unanimous consent meant every listed person had to agree. Anne's expression made the obstacle obvious. She would not support a return without proof that trust had truly been rebuilt. Harry pushed the card back toward Charles. He said he would never sit at another royal table while Meghan was placed separately. Then he left without bowing and closed the door hard behind him. Harry had made his choice, but the real power did not rest with the person who walked out. It rested with those who remained inside and controlled the rules. The monarchy rarely needs to raise its voice. Its most devastating decisions are often made through wording, precedent, and signatures placed beneath carefully measured sentences. Meghan's exclusion appeared to carry Charles's authority, yet the king was only one part of the structure holding the chair beyond her reach. Behind him stood William's concern for the future crown, Anne's command of tradition, and a palace system that could turn private mistrust into permanent ceremonial reality. Charles held final authority over his household, but reversing the order was no longer simple. William represented the future of the monarchy. Anne controlled the argument of precedent. The Lord Chamberlain, the senior official responsible for organizing major royal ceremonies and household arrangements, turned their decision into working policy. Any reversal would expose disagreement at the very top. Each event required a fresh placement list. That list determined where every guest sat and what rank each position carried. Meghan's name had been marked ineligible across state dinners, diplomatic receptions, ceremonial luncheons, and private royal functions hosted under the monarch's authority. The rule did not need to be announced again. It simply followed her from table to table. Charles felt the cost first. Alone in his office, he read Harry's written refusal to attend future dinners. The prince's message was brief, but its meaning was brutal. He would not participate while his wife was separated. The king removed his glasses and pressed his fingers against his eyes. For several seconds, he looked less like a monarch defending order and more like a father watching his son move further away. Camilla urged caution. She warned that a permanent ban might become more damaging than a temporary restriction, because it left no room for trust to recover. Charles asked whether she would personally feel safe discussing confidential matters with Meghan beside them during a state dinner. The Queen Consort did not answer at once. Her silence gave him the answer he feared. William had tried to leave one narrow path open. He wanted the wording to say, "Until confidence is restored." Anne demanded something harder. "Unless unanimously restored." Unanimous restoration meant every senior royal at the principal table had to agree before Meghan could return. The future king had left a door unlocked. The princess had placed several people behind it. The deeper concern was access. A seat beside the monarch created informal contact with diplomats, donors, relatives, and household officials who often spoke more freely over dinner than during official meetings. Inside the palace, the order was described as containment, not humiliation. Catherine finally read the review file and understood her own power. She closed it, looked at William, and said she would not allow her approval to become a weapon against Meghan. The prince heard the warning clearly. The united front had begun to crack. Catherine's discomfort could not undo what had already been signed, and the consequences began arriving before the palace had even prepared its public explanation. The first consequence was not a shouting match, it was an absence. At the next royal luncheon, 2 settings were quietly removed instead of 1. Harry had kept his promise and stayed away with Meghan. Their missing places created a silence that no music, conversation, or polished silver could disguise. What began as an attempt to control access now threatened to make the family's fracture visible at every gathering the crown was trying to preserve. Harry declined 3 upcoming royal meals, including a charitable luncheon connected to one of Charles's longest-supported causes. A royal luncheon is a formal meal used to bring family members, donors, and public figures together under the monarch's authority. His refusal mattered because it did more than empty a chair. It weakened the appearance of unity around work the king had spent years protecting. Charles felt every rejection personally. He had tried to separate ceremonial trust from family affection, believing he could limit Meghan's access without losing Harry. The plan failed. His son treated the two as inseparable, and each declined invitation became another reminder that the directive was costing the monarch more than control. It was costing him time, contact, and influence. Meghan faced the damage at home. A revised invitation placed Harry near the royal party, while assigning her to a distant guest table. She read it twice, tore it carefully down the middle, and held the pieces until he reached for them. Only then did she begin to cry. The pain was not simply that she had been moved. It was that the family still expected her to attend and help display the very rejection she was being asked to endure. Harry's anger shifted into guilt. He admitted that he had hoped returning to family events might soften old wounds over time. Meghan answered that visible separation was more humiliating than exclusion, because it forced her to participate in her own demotion. He understood then that every invitation carried the same hidden demand: accept the insult quietly, or be blamed for staying away. Palace staff began to fear the pattern. Repeated absences would draw attention to seating plans and turn an internal restriction into a public scandal. That danger became immediate when a duplicate planning sheet vanished from a household office. The document carried the initials MDS outer placement only, a notation proving the exclusion followed Meghan from one event to the next. Catherine acted before officials could contain the leak. Without informing Charles, William, or palace staff, she sent Meghan a private message asking to meet. The princess knew her own seat had become part of the punishment, and she no longer wanted silence to speak for her. With the palace preparing for exposure, and Harry refusing every compromise, Catherine crossed the line between protocol and family and asked Meghan to meet her alone. There were no aides taking notes, no husbands defending old grievances, and no seating chart lying between them. Catherine and Meghan met in a private drawing room after dusk, entering through separate doors to avoid attention. For years, their relationship had been interpreted by everyone except the 2 women themselves. Now the chair had made silence impossible. One possessed the position Meghan had been denied. The other carried the humiliation Catherine could no longer pretend not to understand. Catherine spoke first. She did not promise to reverse the order, and she did not pretend that one conversation could erase years of mistrust. The princess explained that the principal table, the inner royal seating area reserved for the monarch and senior family members, was never something she considered her personal territory. She had not requested Meghan's exclusion, and she did not want her own place used to justify it. Meghan listened without interrupting. Then she answered with painful calm. Intent no longer changed impact, she said. Every photograph showing Catherine beside Charles while she sat among distant guests would create the same message. One woman had been accepted, and the other had been judged unworthy. The Duchess did not accuse her directly, but the truth still landed between them. Catherine moved away from the larger chair prepared for her, and pulled 2 armchairs together, so they faced each other equally. Meghan noticed. Her guarded posture softened for the first time, because the gesture rejected the hierarchy that had shaped their conflict. Nothing had been solved, but the room no longer felt like another royal test. Meghan finally admitted what had happened at Sandringham. She had discussed the private correspondence with Harry because she felt decisions were being made about her without allowing her any voice. She confronted Anne out of frustration, not calculation. Yet she also accepted that repeating confidential details during dinner had given the family a genuine reason to question her judgment. The admission cost her, but she did not withdraw it. Catherine offered honesty in return. She acknowledged that the palace often used silence as protection, while leaving the excluded person to carry every public accusation alone. That silence had protected the institution, but it had also allowed Meghan to absorb the full weight of decisions she had not controlled. Then the battle shifted. Meghan said she would stop seeking restoration of the exclusive seat and would no longer ask Harry to fight for it. Catherine agreed to oppose invitations designed to separate a married couple for symbolic effect. Private family gatherings would remain open without ceremonial rank, while official state tables would stay closed. The chair had not been restored. Its power had simply been reduced. Their private agreement changed the emotional battle, but it arrived too late to contain the story because the missing planning sheet had already reached the public. By sunrise, the palace's most carefully guarded seating rule was no longer private. A newspaper front page displayed two photographs side by side, Catherine seated beside Charles at a state banquet, and Meghan positioned several tables away at an earlier reception. Between them stood the headline, "The Chair She Can Never Have." What the family had treated as controlled protocol was instantly transformed into a national argument over status, punishment, race, loyalty, marriage, and royal power. Broadcasters moved quickly. They explained that the sovereign's family seat, the inner position reserved for those publicly trusted to represent the monarch, carried far more meaning than comfort or rank. It signaled belonging. Commentators split almost immediately. Some called the restriction responsible boundary setting. Others described it as calculated public degradation, designed to make Meghan's rejection visible every time she entered a royal room. Palace officials refused to discuss individual seating arrangements. The silence was meant to contain the damage, but it only made the leak more powerful. The missing planning sheet showed that Meghan's outer placement was not accidental and had not been limited to one event. Her initials appeared beside the same instruction again and again, proving that the exclusion had become a system. Outside Buckingham Palace, the argument became impossible to ignore. One person held a handwritten sign reading, "A family should sit together." Another stood only a few feet away with the words, "Trust must be earned." Mounted police passed between them as cameras captured the two messages facing each other. In one moment, the entire national divide had been reduced to two pieces of cardboard. Charles read the front page in silence. He folded the newspaper once, then again, and asked an aide whether Harry had seen it. When the answer came, the king canceled his first meeting and remained behind a closed door. The scandal had moved beyond protocol. It had become a public measure of his failure to hold the family together. Harry responded in a way the palace had not expected. He gave no angry interview and made no direct accusation. Through a written public statement, the prince confirmed that he and Meghan would no longer seek places at ceremonial royal tables. His restraint denied officials the confrontation they had prepared to answer. Catherine's influence appeared quietly. The palace announced that future private family invitations would not deliberately separate married couples. Although official state precedents, the formal order deciding rank at crown events would remain unchanged. Meghan watched the broadcast until commentators began debating her humiliation. Then she turned off the television. She no longer wanted the chair returned. She wanted the monarchy to lose the power to define her worth through where it allowed her to sit. The world had delivered its judgment loudly, but the final verdict belonged to the family members who now had to decide whether the chair would remain a weapon or become merely a piece of furniture again. In the end, Meghan was never restored to the sovereign's family seat. The directive remained in place, the principal table stayed closed, and the palace did not apologize for protecting the boundary it believed had been breached. Yet the decision did not produce the victory its architects expected. By refusing to keep fighting for admission, Meghan stripped the chair of its greatest power. It could determine her ceremonial rank, but it could no longer determine her emotional value. Meghan remained excluded from the inner royal table at state dinners, diplomatic banquets, and official crown functions. The working royal hierarchy, the formal structure defining who represents the monarch and receives ceremonial priority, did not bend for her. No secret reversal followed. No private apology restored what had been removed. The restriction stayed exactly where the palace had placed it. Harry accepted the reality without surrendering his marriage to it. He and Meghan agreed to attend only those private gatherings where they could enter and sit as a couple without staged separation. They no longer sought formal recognition from the institution. Instead, They chose limited family contact on terms that did not require either of them to participate in public humiliation. Charles made one final attempt to close the wound. During a private meeting, he slid the original place card across the table toward his son. Harry looked down at Meghan's name, then pushed it back. He told his father that he no longer needed the palace to prove that his marriage belonged somewhere. The words carried no anger. That made them harder for the king to hear. Charles placed the card inside a desk drawer rather than destroying it. The monarch understood that the order may have protected access to royal conversations, but it had also weakened his influence over Harry's life. He had preserved a boundary and lost control of what happened beyond it. Catherine and Meghan did not become friends. Their private conversation erased neither resentment nor history. Yet they reached a quieter agreement. Ceremonial rivalry would no longer be allowed to deepen personal hostility. The princess kept her place. Meghan stopped asking for it. Both women refused to let the chair speak for them again. The monarchy preserved its hierarchy, but it exposed the cost. By turning a seat into an instrument of trust, it also showed how quickly protocol could become punishment when family pain was given ceremonial form. Meghan later entered a private gathering beside Harry. No principal place waited for her, and she demanded none. She chose an ordinary chair, sat beside her husband, and began speaking before anyone could assign meaning to where she had settled. There is no further battle to tease and no hidden reversal waiting behind palace doors. The chair remained with the crown, but the final emotional victory belonged to the woman who refused to let it define her.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.